and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Jack Fusco, President and CEO, Cheniere Energy. Paul Marsden, President, Bechtel Energy. Mike Sommers, President and CEO, American Petroleum Institute. Moderator, Rita Lofana, Editor-in-Chief, AGI.
Please. Hello, everyone. We have a very distinguished panel for this session about US energy policies, a very hot topic right now. So welcome, Jack Fusco, representing the leading LNG exporter in the US, second globally. Paul Marsden, representing one of the top EPC contractors in the world. And Mike Sommers, President of the largest trade association representing all aspects of American oil and gas. So I'm looking forward for this conversation. Let's jump right into it. So the US government has taken some significant steps to promote new energy solutions, but last Friday, they decided to pause approvals for LNG export terminals. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. Jack, would you like to start?
Good. Thank you, Rita. And thank you to Baker Hughes and Lorenzo for having me here. Quite honestly, after listening to one of the panels earlier this morning, I'm just confused. There was a talk about doing an environmental assessment. There's a talk about price. And I'd like to be transparent and talk more about the science of the product. So liquefied natural gas, and I like to say that in the US, we export innovation. So in the United States in 2007, CO2 emissions were at an all-time peak. Today, they've dropped over 15%. A majority of that drop is coal to gas switching in power plants. And that's what we do for the world with our US LNG, is we provide that platform so other countries around the world can hit their climate change goals with their coal to gas switching, just like the US is doing. So I'm very confused of why that needs to be reanalyzed. And the other aspect of it was price. And in 2016, Cheniere sent the first tanker of LNG to Korea. And the price at that point for Henry Hub natural gas was $2.60 an MMBTU. Production in 2016 was around 70 BCF a day. Today, we've sent Cheniere 3,200 tankers to 39 different countries around the world. The price at Henry Hub today is $2.60 an MMBTU, exactly the same price as it was in 2016. And production is up to 106 BCF a day. So our export capacity hasn't kept up with our ability to find and produce more and more natural gas.
Thank you. Paul, can we hear your point of view?
Yeah, we've been here before. In the US. It's back, we heard from Brad Crabtree this morning, 2017, 2018, and at Bechtel, we believe in, fundamental and robust permitting, being held to account to that through the development of the project and then in execution. And, we'll always believe in that, but we've been through these types of knot holes previously. We've built multiple LNG plants, many of them for Jack at Cheniere through multiple administrations, and this too will pass in due course. And we've just got to stay committed to our customers, committed to the regulatory processes that are in place, believe that they are robust and there for good reason, which they are, and committed to continuing to develop US LNG, because its value proposition, as Jack says, is very, very clear in displacing dirtier forms of fuel that are used to generate power all around the world.
Mike, you called President Biden's decision, I'm quoting, a win for Russia, a loss for American allies, US jobs, and global climate progress. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so, I mean, you think about this Biden administration, we've disagreed with them on a lot of different issues. I will say that this decision, I think, is probably the worst energy decision that they have made so far. When you put this in perspective, you have US allies abroad, both in Europe and in Asia, that are begging for American natural gas to power their future. They want it not just because it is going to be able to it's going to provide the energy that they need during a time of political turmoil throughout the world, but also they want it because of environmental performance. We know that US natural gas is 50% more clean than coal. And we know that most of the time, US natural gas is replacing coal as the primary fuel source. So it goes against Biden's commitments to our allies. Second of all, it hurts our environmental performance across the world. We want to export, as Jack said, American innovation. But we also want to export American environmental progress. We continue to lead the world in cutting GHG emissions in the United States, and it's because of that fuel switch from coal to natural gas. And then third, I believe it completely undermines American and world national security. We need more energy in the world right now. We know that energy demand is only going up, it is not going down, particularly with the dawn of AI and more demand for electricity. We're going to need all of the above energy solutions, but it needs to be based on US natural gas. So this proposal, I think, is bad for American jobs, it's bad for American national security, and it helps people who are opponents to the Western world, like Putin. It's a disaster for the United States, and I think it needs to be reversed immediately.
So this is a very important year for the US with the presidential election. So this question is for all of you. Do you think this pause will go past the November 5th election? And Jack and Paul, please share your point of view, also because we understand you're working on new projects.
Well, I was really pleased to hear on the stage Assistant Secretary Crabtree say that he was using the national labs to do their analysis work, because I think we based our life cycle analysis that Cheniere published in the American Society of Chemical Engineers for public comment back in 2021, based off the national labs LCA analysis. So I think that's a step in the right direction. If they want to do it quickly, I think they can do it quickly. I'm hopeful that this will be behind us in November. But as we know worldwide, I mean, this is going to be one heck of an election year. I think half the human population is up for election. So I'm hopeful that this is a short-term thing.
Yeah, I'm with Jack, but I'd like to just draw on a point that Mike made, which is about jobs. Let's not forget, particularly on the U.S. Gulf Coast, where all of the LNG construction is underway. And I'm just talking about the projects that Bechtel's doing for our customers. It's over 40,000 high-paying jobs that this industry creates, and that's not just during construction. There's tentacles that pass all through the local communities, the local supply chain, and the investments that are being made have an immediate, tangible, positive impact on those communities. And part of the energy transition that we're all in, which I think we've realized over the last several years isn't happening next year. It's going to be something which is more generational. We have to develop the workforce of the next generation that's going to be a part of the energy of the future. And the LNG construction that's underway and the energy industry in the U.S. Gulf Coast is a tremendously successful platform for doing that. So I think the point you made, Jack, this will pass. I'm pretty confident that we will see this pass before the end of the year, because it can't be lost sight. The incredible benefit that communities and people feel because of the investment that's been made in LNG, and people talk about it with a lot of pride.
Right, Mike. So what is API planning to do in the meantime?
Well, no matter who's elected President of the United States in November, I think we're confident that we're going to be able to work with that administration. It's very important that no matter who's in office, that we maintain a bipartisan relationship with Republicans and Democrats to advance the American energy future. I think the real concern is that this was a political decision made by President Biden. I think as outlined well by Jack, there's no price impact. The infrastructure needs to be built to support our European and Asian allies. And the jobs implications, we estimate that there are going to be about 70,000 new jobs created if these new terminals are built. So on the merits, this doesn't make any sense. And I expect that once the election is over, people will regain their senses and stop listening to TikTok and environmental activists, and instead start listening to the people who actually base these decisions on science and common sense. So we got to get through the political silly season in the United States, and I'm hopeful at that point cooler heads will prevail.
So anyway, we need to find a balance between low-carbon economy, energy security, and economic growth. So where is this balance, Jack?
No, I think we've done a lot with our LCA, which is our life cycle analysis. So every day we buy natural gas from 70 different producers. We transport it on 25 different pipelines through all of America and into Canada and down to our 2 facilities. So what we use our life cycle analysis for is to measure our carbon footprint by tanker. And then we deliver what we call a cargo emissions tag to the customer that actually goes through the calculations of what the offsets need to be. That's just another step in our evolution. The next step for us is, now that we know exactly where the emissions are coming from up and down the value chain, we can start to chip away at those emissions. And I'm a firm believer that if you don't measure it, and measurements have to be in real time, that you can't improve upon it. And it's our goal at Cheniere to make sure that our product is sustainable and quantifiable, and in that we provide a service to those customers.
Paul, what's your take?
So if we just think about a cubic feet of gas that comes into the front of an LNG plant, about 90% of that leaves the LNG plant as a liquid. So, what is the other 10%? Well, there's some auto-consumption in the fuel that powers the plant, and there's some other products that are in the gas, such as nitrogen. So we look at the carbon intensity of LNG. We're talking about the 10%, not the 90%, and there's a tremendous amount of capital investment that will be required in things like a carbon capture scheme for post-combustion and the like. Billions of dollars of infrastructure, lots of complexity to operate. And focusing on that, we believe is, while interesting, it can't be a distraction from the benefit that the 90% of the gas, which is that which is liquefied, and we know the carbon intensity for the same amount of power that is a third from natural gas. So that's a direct correlation to greenhouse gas emissions. So while as an EPC contractor, we love to build big complex assets, whatever they may be, we also know that it's got to be a responsible level of investment. There's got to be a return on that, and it shouldn't introduce complexity that ultimately the end consumer of the gas ends up wearing the cost for. That being said, we've strived over the years to figure out how do you increase thermal efficiency in the facility, how do you embrace new technology such as what Baker Hughes has offered. If you look at the technology advancements in gas turbines, and the emissions come from them today to what they were when we built some of the first stages at Sabine Jack, it's completely different. The technology that we have available to us today. So we're really focused on that. How do we increase energy efficiency inside the facility? How do you keep the product inside of the pipe? Because that also has a direct impact on improving emissions, but it's also really good from ultimately, the competitiveness of the facilities. That's where we're really focused is, how do we continue to innovate as we're designing these facilities? How do we use new technology? How do we use new hardware that constantly improves that which we already know how to do?
So you're working on new energy solutions also as an APC contractor, and more generally speaking, what is the industry doing, Mike? How do you strike the balance?
I spent the first half of this panel talking about concerns that I had with the Biden administration decision. I'm going to spend this portion actually talking about something that they did right, which was portions of the Inflation Reduction Act actually, I think, went the right direction, particularly in incentivizing CCUS in the United States. The expanded 45Q tax credit made building a lot of these projects much more economic, whether it's direct air capture or CCS. You're seeing a lot of investment from the American oil and gas industry on decarbonizing through CCS. There's also a new tax provision, the so-called 45V tax credit, on advancing hydrogen production. Unfortunately, some of the rules that we've seen so far on that rule won't advance the development of hydrogen from natural gas, but we're hopefully going to be working with the Treasury Department to get those rules right. I think, unfortunately, sometimes governments, when they try to predict what the energy future looks like, they usually get it wrong. I mean, if you think about the last time the United States did a big energy bill before the Inflation Reduction Act, it was 2008. And in 2008, it was all about how we advanced cellulosic ethanol and how we import more natural gas into the United States. Congress got it completely wrong. The right approach, I think, is to continue to advance these market-based approaches. And the market continues to tell API members and oil and gas industry in the United States that they want lower emissions. And this industry is taking that challenge head on, particularly when it comes to CO2 and methane reductions within our own operations.
I understand your point of view, but geopolitical situations are evolving all the time. So talking to that, Jack, do you think low carbon solution can be a plus for US LNG exported to the European Union?
Yeah, so a big portion of our customers, we call them foundation customers, which are long-term customers that sign for 15 to 20-year contractual lengths with us, and at least one tanker a month are here in Europe. So we have a very strong relationship with Europe. We joined OGMP 2.0, which will require us to put targets on methane and methane intensity, which we don't currently have yet. But I do think what Mike mentioned on some of the IRA tax benefits, if Treasury actually comes out with rules that aren't so stringent, I think it'll go a long way to help, especially in our case with sequestration and move those projects significantly forward.
Paul, how do you see it from your angle?
So I'm a big believer, as we are at Bechtel, is the markets have to drive where new energy is going to be. And I think that's part of the realization is that there isn't a hydrogen economy today. Doesn't mean it won't be there at some point in the future. And as we saw with battery technology over a relatively short period of time, the improvement in the technology has been dramatic. Pretty confident that we're going to see some of the same with hydrogen. Electrolyzer technology it's pretty old. It's pretty old. It's pretty energy inefficient. So it kind of begs the question: if you've got to use excess power to make this, why does this make sense? Well, it does in some certain applications, and technology will continue to advance, which in turn drives the market economics, which means there's no longer a long-term reliance on subsidy, which is not sustainable. The subsidy is there to stimulate these markets, is to encourage people to maybe take more risk than they would have done, but we can't rely on them in the long term. Technology is going to be the answer that unlocks this, and that's what we're really excited about. It's what we're working in today. Renewable power generation is going to be part of a future energy state, but bringing the conversation back to natural gas, nuclear power, these things that provide stable base load that we can rely on. We've also got to stay focused in how do we continue to innovate in those spaces, how do we continue to lower capital intensity on these facilities, and frankly, build them faster to meet the demands that are there to keep society as we know it today and keeps us on the growth trajectories that we're on all around the world. We need that energy. So there's a more of everything approach, but we've got to invest in the future today to go and understand where are those markets going to develop, how are they going to develop, and how can we actually be a part of that?
In the meantime, Jack and Paul just mentioned, Mike, do you think this pause can make US LNG less competitive?
Well, I think, unfortunately, because of this pause, you're probably going to see some investment that would have come to the United States go elsewhere. We're not the only producer of LNG in the world, and these investment decisions are being made now. And if investors perceive that the regulatory environment, no matter who the president of the United States is going to be more hostile to LNG, that investment's not going to come to the United States. So that's our big concern about the pause. But I also wanted to make the case, at API 4 years ago, we unveiled the API Climate Action Framework. We take these issues very, very seriously on how you continue to reduce emissions within our own operations. That included the endorsement of a price on carbon in the United States. It included the endorsement of direct federal regulation of methane. We know that is an issue and we have to deal with it. But the rest of the framework was really about how and what commitments the industry is making to decarbonize. And that's where the real power in that framework is. Because we know that the world is going to continue to consume oil, natural gas, and yes, coal for decades and decades to come. In fact, we reached record levels of the use of oil, natural gas, coal, and gasoline last year alone. The real enemy here is emissions, as Lorenzo said earlier, and we need to make sure that we're limiting those emissions both through industry actions and in working with the government.
Okay, thank you. Time is almost up. I want to thank our great speakers, and I think we can all agree that uncertainty in regulations is the worst enemy of development, any kind of development. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.